Welcome, 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 beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. I am not as on time as I like to be. I like to be on the dot on time. I think we started about a minute late, but it's all good. Had a few technical difficulties, but we're here. Um, Welcome back. Y'all know I don't really like to linger a lot. I like to honor the time of the people who showed up on time. Just a second. I want to make sure my things are plugged in so we don't lose anything. Hmm. Make sure. Boom. Okay, that took care of that. So we're good now. We're good. We are good. 3, 2, 1. Hey, loves. It's Brittany, your manifesting mentor. I'm not a coach, not a guru, just someone walking this path, walking the walk, and sharing what works. Let me fix my lighting because I'm having a hard time. I think now I'm overexposed. Hmm. I don't know if we can get this to what I need it to be, but we're gonna make this work, y'all. We're gonna make this work. I had to improvise. I'm not recording where I like to be typically, but we'll make this work. So 3, 2, 1. Hey loves, it's your girl Brittany. Hey, and I'm your manifesting mentor. I'm not a coach, not a guru, just a woman who's walking the walk and sharing what works. So if this sounds like you're in the right place, I am reading Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I'm sharing real life reflections as I read it for the third time. If you're new here, I've been reading chapter by chapter and sharing all of these reflections, and you can catch the full playlist of readings and replays of my lives here on YouTube. You can also find that link on my TikTok profile. And if you're ready to script your future in detail, not just dream about it, check out my self published vision book journal. It's titled I Want It All, and it's a vision book journal for manifesting dreams. It's the perfect companion to what we're discussing tonight, and it's available in my TikTok and YouTube bios. So, without further ado, tonight we're diving into parts 1 through 3 of chapter 8, which is mind movies and kaleidoscopes. And in part 1, we give the introduction, or Dr. Joe gives the introduction to what mind movies are. And many of us are likely familiar with vision boards. If you grew up in my era, then you're familiar with vision boards. And we're also familiar with how many people use them along their manifestation journeys to sort of program their subconscious mind and plant seeds in their subconscious mind for possibility through cutting out images, putting them on a cardboard or a big piece of paper, or in my case, in a journal, and being intentional about what it is they want to create in the areas of life that matter most. This process is very valid. It still works. I think it's still a very powerful tool. Um, as a matter of fact, I think it's so powerful that I created in 2017 my vision book journal, which I talked about earlier, where I didn't just want a regular vision board. I wanted something that I could script and be very detailed and intentional with what it is I wanted to create. And I wanted to let other people feel what that experience was like. So I created a journal. And if you're interested, I mentioned where you can find that in my bios on both my platforms that I'm on, TikTok and YouTube. But let's fast forward to today with increased shortage of attention span, right? We don't have the same attention span that we used to. We're scrolling on social media, we're looking at short form video more than long form video, and it's changing the way we process information and the way our brains are wired. And so along comes something like a mind movie. And Dr. Joe introduces this concept of why he uses mind movies. And he does not take credit for creating them. He mentions that it's a friend of his who came up with a business around mind movies, and he saw how effective it was at helping people plant seeds in their subconscious mind, reprogram their subconscious mind. And he just wanted to use it as a tool along with the meditations that he would teach in his workshops. And I have so much respect for him for always giving credit where it's due. I always tell people he's not pretending as if he created anything. He's just a really good student, an excellent student of the wisdom. He's practiced so many different things. I think he had a yoga spot at one time, and now he had, or not now, but he had a yoga spot for many years. He talked about having, I think it was yoga. Don't quote me on that. Something in the spiritual community. I think it was yoga. He had a studio. And so he's just a really good student of ancient wisdom and just spiritual practices. And that's what I think makes him such a good teacher. You have to be a good student if you're going to be a good teacher. So, with that being said, he introduces this concept in chapter 8 of mind movies, and it allows us to emotionally condition the body and the subconscious mind with new outcomes. He reminds us in this chapter that we are often influenced by external programming. And I did a few videos on this, but it includes advertisements, news cycles, which are super fear based, and cultural narratives that we didn't consciously choose. We basically inherited all of this stuff. And the mind movie is basically our way of reclaiming authorship, basically taking your power back and deciding what is for you. If you're going to be programmed with anything, it might as well be intentional. It might as well be something that's more in alignment with who you really are and what you want to create in your world, in your life. And I would say that I've created two mind movies for myself personally. One focused on my personal life, relationship, family structure, goals, and things like that. And then I had another that was focused on career goals and things that I choose to do as I transition into the next chapter of the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And I've even helped loved ones create mind movies. And for me, when I watch my mind movie, I feel like I enter the scene of my future self because I do what Dr. Joe encourages us to do, which is feel the feelings of the scene. So it's not enough to just pull some visuals that are, inspiring. That's great. But don't forget your why. Don't forget what that photo, that image, that scene represents for you because it's not the thing that we're really after. It's the feeling that we think the thing is going to give us. And so from there, he wants you to tune into that feeling that you think the scene, the outcome, the experience is going to give you and live that future when? Now. And so when I watch my mind movie, I feel like I enter the scene of my future self. And I've had moments where something that I visualized or something that I had in my mind movie literally happened. Sometimes it happens in ways that I didn't even catch at first. Sometimes I later reflect and go, wait a second, that was something that I know I put in my mind movie. And I will actually recall the scene that it came from, that it was inspired by. I can't talk tonight. I'm sorry, y'all. But there were other times where I also manifested from my mind movie, but I wasn't necessarily emotionally present enough to feel that it was something that I had practiced. So it reminds me that feeling is the key to imprinting your mind movie or your imprinting anything in your subconscious mind more deeply. But Dr. Joe also talks about how um, sometimes the repetition of it all, the whole key to get there, to know that you've fully impressed it, is that when it happens, it doesn't seem so novel. It doesn't seem like, wow, that really happened. It's more so like, you almost expected it. And Joe says that that's because, in essence, repeating this mind movie and practicing it over and over again with the feelings of elevated emotion, your body doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. So it thinks, in essence, that it already happened. So think about something that you have happen all the time. When it happens again, you're not surprised by it. You're not shocked by it. You don't have super elevated emotions about it. It's normal, right? It's really normal. You might have maybe an initial moment where you're just super grateful for it because you can recognize what it is. But in essence, you're not super surprised by it because your body's already lived it. And that's the purpose of us creating these mind movies and really practicing them and getting our bodies on board with feeling safe with whatever it is we're calling in, whether it's health, whether it's improved relationships, new opportunities, things you've never experienced before. Mind movies are super powerful tools to help you tap into your subconscious mind. And we're going to go deeper in the next parts on why they're so effective because of the three minds in one brain, as Dr. Joe Dispenza describes it. But before we move on, we had some questions from part one. This person says, how often should I watch my mind movie? Once a day or more? Dr. Joe says that if you pair it with whatever practice you have to get yourself in an elevated emotion, whether that's blessings of the energy center meditation, reconditioning the body to a new mind meditation, or whatever you do, even if it's not Dr. Joe's meditations, whatever practice you have around getting yourself in an elevated space, then pair your mind movie with that. Because ideally, you want to do it in the morning when you before you start your day, before you get into your routines, or right before you go to bed. And it kind of reminds me of what Neville says, like a state akin to sleep, where you're imprinting an imaginal scene. But in this case, it's your mind movie, very intentional scenes that you put together with phrases and intentional music that helps evoke certain emotions. It's about feeling it every single time you watch it, if possible. Because Dr. Joe says it's not even about just the repetition of it all. You actually want to condition yourself to feel those emotions whenever you watch it. If you think about your favorite movie, that movie is your favorite for a reason. It typically evokes certain emotions from you. So you want to be intentional about the scenes that you're creating as part of your mind movie for whatever the subject matter may be, that you're I guess gathering scenes or images that evoke certain meanings to you so that it's not so hard to reach for that feeling. And he says basically like once a day with emotion is more powerful than three times a day with no emotion. So this is why the emotion part is so important. And this is why being intentional with your why, like why are you choosing these images? Does it evoke, inspiration in some kind of way? If so, what kind of inspiration? What does it mean to you? Because that's what's going to guide your feelings. Only you know what means something to you. And so, you know, again, like he said, once a day with the emotion is more powerful than multiple times a day without the emotion. Because then, to me, it kind of reminds me of what Neville says. It's like vain repetition of affirmations. If you don't have a connection with the affirmation that you're saying, if your body doesn't have like an emotional response to whatever it is you're affirming for in a way that makes you feel empowered, it's just vainly repeating something and it doesn't really have an effect, any effect really. I hope that helps. And then someone else says, can I make a mind movie without video editing skills? Yes, you can. As a matter of fact, the young woman that and I won't call her young woman, but the person that Dr. Joe credits for creating mind movies, he mentions their name in the book. He also gives their website. I think they have an app or some kind of software that allows you to make a simple mind movie. I personally did mine through Canva, and I'll actually link a few videos in my Becoming Supernatural playlist so that if you're interested in creating a mind movie, you can watch the videos that I referenced that were super easy. You don't have to have design skills. You don't have to have video editing skills. It's pretty simple drag and drop typing. And then once you have your final product, you download and you can save that on your phone. You can upload it to YouTube and make it private if you want to. I've done that before. Um, and so you don't really need um, editing skills to create a mind movie. And like I mentioned before, what really matters with your mind movie is the intention and the emotional charge, that whatever the images are that you select, that they mean enough to you that you don't have to reach for a feeling. It's like, oh, this picture of two lovers hugging, really inspires me because I could see myself in that scene. I could see myself being the person being loved on in that scene, you know? So your subconscious doesn't care how pretty the images are, it just has to mean something to you. So it responds to emotion and repetition more than anything else. And I hope that helps. So we're going to get into part two, which is where Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about three minds in one brain. And he talks about the different parts of the mind or the brain. And then he introduces a concept called kaleidoscope eyes. So this section breaks down how our brain functions in those three parts: the conscious, the subconscious, and the analytical mind. And he says how accessing the trance state allows us to bypass the analytical and install new programs. So, as you probably remember, he talked a lot about how our brain goes into different states of consciousness, different brainwave patterns. So, we're typically in beta when we're awake. That's when we have a lot of internal chatter. That inner critic is super loud and awake. Then, when we're drifting off to sleep, that analytical mind is slowing down. We're thinking less. The brain waves are slowing down into theta, um, and then gamma, and then delta, right? And so the key is to use something called kaleidoscope. And he uses the kaleidoscope because he says whenever he has a transcendental moment, he sees these patterns that look like a kaleidoscope, fractal patterns that his brain can't make sense of. And because his brain can't make sense of it, he automatically goes into a state of trance. And this is what happens to all of us. So he uses the kaleidoscope to prime the brain into a mode where you can be receptive, less analytical, less internal dialogue, right? And you're going to use light, motion, and vibration to quiet that chatter. And that's what a kaleidoscope is. So, this part really made me appreciate how intentional the kaleidoscope actually is. It's not just pretty visuals, it's actually a neurological tool that lowers your brainwave frequencies and opens the subconscious up to suggestion. And so that's why we use the kaleidoscope. That's why Dr. Joe highly recommends it. And when you see or search for anything like a mind movie on YouTube or any platform, you will notice that this is what it's getting you to do when you stare into that kaleidoscope. Because again, you're looking at geometric patterns and shapes that are changing so fast that you can't predict what's coming up next. Your brain can't connect the dots. So it's automatically just going to go into a state of like hypnosis almost. And that's what trance really is. So it's like turning the volume down on your inner critic and turning the dial up on your inner vision. And so one person asked, what if I find it hard to quiet my analytical mind? That's exactly what kaleidoscopes are for. So it bypasses your logic mind, it bypasses all that chatter, and it helps you slip into more receptive alpha and theta brainwave states. So you don't need to force silence, basically. This is what Joe is teaching us. If you put on that kaleidoscope, you don't have to fight with your brain. You don't have to fight with your thoughts. You don't have to tell yourself, stop thinking and focus, right? You don't have to force that. You just need to create conditions where silence naturally happens. And that's what happens when you're watching a kaleidoscope just before your mind movie. So it's a tool and it's something that you can let work for you. Let it work for you. Second question, this person says, is the kaleidoscope required before every meditation? No, nothing is required before any meditation. Again, your tools are just for you to know that you're never out of options. Excuse me. And this is why I never tell people to get too attached to any technique because the techniques are not the way. The kaleidoscope, the mind movie, scripting, journaling, vision boards, that's not the way. It's a tool. And if you pay attention, every single tool is literally the purpose of any and every tool is to get you to embody a certain state of consciousness. That's it. That's all. If you see tools as anything more than that, you're missing the point. A journal is not that powerful without the intention. The intention is to get you in a state of feeling like whatever you're scripting, whatever you're writing is actually happening. Because again, your subconscious does not know the difference between real and imagined. So if you're writing something, you're in that moment focused on whatever that intention is, Your brain is going there with you. Your consciousness is going there with you. So every single tool we have is just intended to put us in a certain state. So it's not, how do you say, required, but it is helpful, especially if you're someone who has a hard time shutting off that chatter. Play the kaleidoscope. It confuses your analytical brain to the point where it just stops, it quiets down, and now you're in a state of trance easily. So, if you think of it as warming up before a workout, for example, that's how I like to look at it. It helps you shift your brain state faster so you're not wrestling your way into coherence and you're just gliding into it. That's it, that's all. And yeah, never think that anything when it comes to manifestation or just intentional creation, nothing is required. You know, someone says, "Hi, do you have a success story to share?" It's so motivating. Yeah, like, I mean, I have tons of stories, honestly. I don't think I share a whole lot of stories here. I think I focus more here on the actual lessons. But I would say I've actually manifested direct scenes from my mind movie, um, down to the point of like details, like me hugging someone's neck. And, you know, it was a romantic scene. I'm not going to get too deep into it because that might be TMI. But I put some scenes in my mind movie that were really intentional. It was a romantic scene that I wanted to experience, and I didn't put a face on it necessarily. I just focused really intently on the emotions of it. To the point where, like, when I would watch the mind movie, I would be somewhat aroused, and it wasn't rated R or rated X. It was just what I wanted to experience and feel. And I mentioned how sometimes you can create these scenes and have intentions for an experience, and you might slip into that experience in your real life and not even realize, hey, that came from my mind movie. And that happened to me on a couple of occasions. So, you know, these things are really effective. I've had vision boards where it wasn't even a mind movie, it was vision boards. I've manifested, my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle, and it was green. And if you know me, you know that for a year and a half before that, I had a Volkswagen Beetle. It was white on my vision board. And before I even went out to look for a car, I wasn't looking for a Beetle. I was looking for something that was economically savvy, easy to fix, easy to repair, cheap to repair. And a Volkswagen wasn't on that list, but it was on my vision board. And I went through a series of different things. And lo and behold, I ended up with a Volkswagen Beetle in a way that I couldn't have figured out because I didn't even think I was going to get one, or at least not for my first car. And it ended up being my first car. So these things are very effective in planting seeds in your subconscious mind. But I think with Dr. Joe, he takes it to the next level because, again, we're so evolved. Everything is vying for our attention with these cell phones. We've gotten to the point where we have such short attention spans. So video content is king right now, especially with social media, things like that. So if you think about how effective, it is that you're so addicted to watching short form video, why not be intentional about creating something that's designed specifically for you and your future? And it helps you focus more on moments that you want to create rather than focusing on things that aren't working in your reality. We do that all day, right? We're always scanning our environment for the things that aren't working, for the things that aren't here yet. I don't have $1 million yet. I can't wait until. I can't wait until I get this new job. I can't wait until I'm healed. I can't wait until I feel better, right? We're always scanning our environment for the deficit, for the lack, right? But your mind movie is intentional programming because it's all programming. The news, the advertisements, your everything that's on your TikTok and social media feed, it's all curated by somebody else. Other people planting ideas in your subconscious about who you are, what you have or don't have, what makes you adequate or inadequate. But when you create a mind movie, you're literally taking your power back and making your focus and awareness and attention be on the future that, even though it's not physically here yet, you feel as though it's already here. And that feeling is the magnet. Feeling is the secret. I don't care what anybody tells you. It matters, right? Because if you feel more in alignment with what it is you desire, you're likely to experience it faster and sooner than if you feel separate from it. because that resistance is a dream killer. It really is. It's literally a dream killer. This person Miracle says, "Thank you, haha, so fun." Also, Dr. Joe is a blessing. Dr. Joe absolutely is a blessing. I would not be talking about him if I did not think that his teachings were effective and efficient. As I mentioned before, I've been on this path for a very long time, and I kept running into inner resistance, and I could not figure out for the life of me, no matter whose technique I used, how to overcome myself. And it started to become a pattern that I would talk about to people that I care about, that I trust. And I tell them, hey, I have this pattern that I want to overcome because, I know intellectually how to create. I'm a super, I think I'm a masterful manifester. I'm very intentional about what I create. I don't miss. But on certain subjects, I kept running up against resistance. And it was only when I came across Joe's work that it clicked, because the missing component was understanding my body and the things I had conditioned it into and why I kept feeling resistance. The memory got stuck in this vessel and I did not know how to get it unstuck. No scripting, no visualizing, none of that worked for me. I had to go through the body to understand the body, understand how it works in order to work with it so that I could work with my body, right? Because we don't want to make our bodies the enemy. People experience sickness or discomfort from illness and chronic pain and things, but you got to remember a lot of that is consequential. It's consequential to the stress that you've been carrying. Your body is the first thing to take a hit when you're not feeling at ease, right? You feel that anxiousness, your heart races, adrenaline starts pumping, cortisol gets to running, all the stress hormones. So your body takes the first hit, but it's also the gateway. It's the gatekeeper in a sense. And so when Joe started talking that talk and he gave me a formula that was like not hard to grasp. I just had to practice it. I knew I was a great student. I've always been a great student. I was that girl in grade school, in college. So I knew I could learn. And it was just a matter of being disciplined and consistent enough to continue to practice. So, yeah, like I love Joe's work. He's literally changed my life. And nobody's paying me to do any of this. I just want other people to be as free as I feel in my life, and even though things aren't 100% perfect, right? It's not about perfection. It's about how you exist every single day, moment to moment. So that's why I show up and read this book. And I really want people to get these concepts. So thank you, Miracle, for your comments and questions. Anybody else, also feel free to drop questions. I talk back, y'all. But we're going to move on to part 3, because this is where Dr. Joe talks about the motion picture of your future. He really goes into the ways in which we've already been conditioned, we've already been programmed by our environment, by these commercials. He gives some really good examples about pharmaceutical commercials and how they start out showing someone living their best life, right? And then suddenly they drop off into a slew of symptoms and side effects from a drug that you need to tell your doctor that you want to take, right? And then they'll rattle off all the things that could go wrong: sudden death, internal bleeding, blah 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 blah. Lo and behold, that is a program, because Joe breaks down the science of why it's so effective and why they've been using it since the beginning of pharmaceutical commercials. And it's because when you pair visuals with intense emotion and you add music, right? That is a recipe for programming. This is why movies are so effective, commercials are so effective, music videos are so effective. And now Joe is trying to tell you your personal mind movie with intention is so effective. So in this section, he explains how the brain and body are entrained by the repetition of it all, right? The imagery, the music, the repetition of all of these things. A well crafted mind movie becomes a mental rehearsal, is what he says. And it's a tool that blends vision, feeling, and identity. So you aren't just watching a goal when you create your mind movie. You're becoming the person who actually already has it because you're rehearsing the feelings of your future. When? Now. And one of my favorite stories from Dr. Joe is when someone, he calls it dimensionalizing an object. And I think this is an exercise that he does at his week-long retreats. But this particular person visualized receiving a large sum of money. I think he wanted $10,000 initially. But when he would do his meditations and visualize, he kept seeing $100,000. But in actuality, he kept doing his meditation, kept doing the meditation and seeing this amount of money in his bank account. And he tells the story so vividly, right? He really felt into it. And he says he eventually ended up manifesting, I think within that same day or so, he manifested this amount of money. But he added so much emotional detail that when it finally happened, he didn't even like feel shock or anything. Like his emotions weren't elevated. And he said something along the lines of he didn't it was almost like an expectancy. And Joe explains it because he's already experienced it in meditation or through his mind movie so vividly that his nervous system was already used to it. So when you watch your mind movie, that's exactly what you're trying to evoke, that same kind of reaction. That by the time the things or the scenes play out, kind of like what happened with me, right? I wasn't checking for it, I wasn't looking for it, I wasn't trying to force the scene to happen from my mind movie. I wasn't planning dates to say, hey, I want to set the romantic scene so that what I put in my mind movie should play out. No, it just naturally happens as if it would have happened anyway. Right. And that's what you want to get to. You want to get to that level of embodiment where, whatever it is you're practicing, when you truly feel the scene of your future as familiar, your body is not going to resist it, right? So it will allow it to play out for you. So if you're one of those people who feels like you self-sabotage, for example, you want something in particular, but every time the opportunity comes to have it, somehow, some way, you subconsciously sabotage. Well, if you create a mind movie and it's really intentional and you practice it the way that Dr. Joe directs us to and advises us to, again, it's not absolutely necessary. No tool is necessary. It's just a tool, but it's effective when you use your tools. So that's how you become the version of you who already lives in that reality. When you constantly repeat it, when you feel those elevated emotions. And Joe, I'll actually put a video in my playlist, my Becoming Supernatural playlist, that you guys can reference because I find it super helpful. It's a video where Dr. Joe talks about the Kaleidoscope and mind movies, and he really breaks down how you should watch it, how many times you should watch it. And you should watch it with the sound on without you even looking at it. And you should watch it with just the kaleidoscope. And like he gives different scenarios for how to watch it because he really wants to make sure that if you're repeating it, you will begin to memorize to the point where you can hear the music that you picked for your mind movie. And with every different changing part of the song, you'll be envisioning the scenes without having to look at the screen. I've done that. Like when I hear the song that I chose for my mind movie, it's not a commercial song. It's actually just like a piano playing because, I didn't want anything with lyrics. I just want a tune that gives me a certain feeling. And we're going to talk more about, choosing the soundtrack of your mind movie in the next part. We'll probably talk about it in Friday's live, but it's really important to choose music. I prefer music without lyrics because sometimes just because the words are there doesn't mean those words have the same meaning for you. And I think people need to understand that. Like we could hear the same song, but the song doesn't have the same meaning for me as it would for you. So I just like to stay away from songs with lyrics, and I like songs that have tunes that evoke certain feelings for me. But when you can tune into your why and just really stay with whatever that intention is and repeat it, you're really going to start to remember certain scenes from your mind movie without having to look at it. And it's kind of like if you ever memorize a music video, for example, it's the same concept. You can hear the song, and because you've seen that video so many times, you know what scene is actually happening at certain parts of the song. So that's what will happen as you practice and repeat your mind movie. That's the intention, at least. So one person asked, what if I don't feel much emotion when I watch mine? if you find yourself not feeling a lot of emotion when you watch your mind movie, I would say go back to the basics of why you chose the scenes that you chose. Because again, you want visuals, images, you know, video clips that evoke a certain meaning for you. So if you're not feeling any emotion, then choose something else. You know what I mean? Like if it's a scene where people are, tapped into laughter, maybe they're feeling joyful in that moment. If you're not feeling joyful when you see that scene of people in that emotional act of laughing, then maybe that's not connecting with you. Find something that does. I just always say be very intentional and stick to your why, and stick to whatever meaning you're giving something, and then you really want to tune into what would it be like if I were in that scene. What would it feel like? And that's the rule of thumb. If you can't think of to yourself, like, what would it feel like if I were in that scene, then don't choose that scene. Choose something that's easy for you to see for yourself, to slip into for yourself. Um, I personally, because I'm a woman of color, like sometimes it's easier for me, and not because I tune into this that much, but sometimes cultural reference makes a difference when I'm choosing certain images, because it's easier for me to imagine that for myself if it's representation wise, if I see a reflection of myself as I'm choosing certain images, or if I see representation of places that I want to be. I'm not going to put a picture of, you know I don't know, a farm, if I really want to be on an island, right? Like it has to make sense, it has to be intentional, your why has to connect for you. And I would just say, like, if you move your body into that scene, you feel the gratitude as if it's done. That's how you know you're really connecting. Like the visuals guide you, but it's your emotions that magnetize the change, right? That magnetize the feeling of you being in that new reality, that intended outcome. This person also asked, can I manifest without a mind movie? Yeah. I mean, we are all masterful co-creators. We've been creating since the beginning of time, like before technology. So yeah, again, these tools are not necessary. They're not a necessity in order for you to have the outcome. The only necessity is belief and embodiment. You have those two things, you're good as gold on any subject. And remember, the tools are just there to help you get into a state of belief and embodiment. They are the tool, they're not the way. They are the, how do you say, they're the tools that help you get there. But the way is you. You are the way. You are the proof. Your I am embodiment is the way and the proof. Um, and that's what I would say on that. But this chapter was, I like this chapter. And again, it brought me back to when I created my own vision book journal. I've referenced that a few times here, because I understood the power of vision boards and just creating a vision. When you have a vision, you have an aim. And when you have an aim and you have an inner conviction for that aim, that's a recipe for magic. And if you could just remind yourself in small ways, even if it is a vision board, even if it is a kaleidoscope mind movie, if you can remind yourself in small ways as you're moving through your reality, no matter what's happening, of the possibilities that lie there, like lie in the atmosphere for you, then you will be able to connect with that. And the more often you connect with that, the better. The more likely it is that you're going to have it unfold, as long as your body's on board, as long as you don't have that inner resistance. And that's what we're practicing all of this for, to release the resistance of our stories, of our past, of our experiences, of our circumstances, of those breakdowns in relationships and communication and identity, and just get back in alignment with our higher selves, who, our higher selves are unlimited. We don't have those limitations when we let go of the old stories, or when we let go of the old man, as Neville Goddard liked to say. So tonight we covered parts 1 through 3 of chapter 8. We talked about how mind movies and the kaleidoscope are effective tools to help reprogram the subconscious mind using visuals, rhythm or music, and emotion, because we can't forget the most important part. But I want you to remember, you're not just thinking your future into being, you're feeling it into your body so you can become the version of you who already lives it. So you can become the version of you who already feels safe and who already feels at one with your vision. So you can always catch the full replay of Becoming Supernatural readings here on YouTube. It's all linked in my profile, whether you're here on YouTube or on TikTok. And if you want to take this to a deeper level and build your vision from scratch, you can check out my vision book journal. It's also linked on my YouTube channel and in my TikTok bio. It's titled I Want It All, and it's a vision book journal for manifesting dreams. Very intentional and cool tool to help you map out the different areas of life where you want to be intentional. And on Friday night, we're going to finish chapter 8 with parts 4 and 5, which is the soundtrack of your future, where you're choosing the music. Dr. Joe goes into that. Those videos will be up tonight. So you can catch up on those before Friday's live. And it's also going to cover I think is the meditation practice of the mind movie. And he's walking us through how to use the kaleidoscope with the mind movie in part 5. So I'm going to see you soon. And I want you to remember your future is already created. Your job is just to become it. I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is your reminder. And you got this. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time.